They say the law bends to the living, but it's the dead who keep the ledger. I learned that the night the radio sang a child's name that wasn't supposed to be sung anymore, and the clock on my wall stopped at 8:13 for exactly 8 minutes and 13 seconds. That's not a metaphor. That's a time stamp. And it wasn't the first time. Florida heat makes liars out of mirrors. You look, you swear you're steady, but the air wobbles and the truth slides off the glass. I used to hunt truths for a living. Detective Jacksonville, the kind of guy who could smell a lie before the liar ran out of words. Then came the case that finished me. Everyone knows the headlines. They don't know what followed. The small, disobedient anomalies that refused to stand down once the verdict came in. You want a promise? Here's mine. By the end of this, you'll know why the law had to change and why it still isn't enough. You'll know what an 8-year-old left in the drywall of this city, in the river silt, and in the static between frequencies where no music belongs. And if you hang with me, I'll show you what turned a skeptic into a man who keeps a nightlight on for a ghost he swears he doesn't believe in. I'm not proud of much these days. My coffee tastes like it worked a double shift before it got to me. My knees sound like bubble wrap when I stand. The fridge is a museum of condiments. But I have one useful thing left, memory that won't turn off. So if my hand shakes, if a joke slips in where a prayer should be, forgive that. The truth hates a clean room. It started with a radio, one of those cheap silver boxes you buy because you're mad at silence and out of better ideas. I keep it on the kitchen counter, next to a stack of legal pads and a ceramic pelican somebody's aunt thought I needed. Midnight, the station flips from oldies to the kind of talk show that makes insomnia feel like a club membership. The host is telling a story about an interstate sighting lights over Baldwin, hovering triangles, the usual. Then beneath the voice, a whisper. A child's name twice. Not mine to say here, but you know it. The one that changed how our city breathes. The one the trial reporters still can't say without their voices catching. I turned the knob, thinking bleed through, bad reception. The electricity hiccuped, the kitchen dimmed, and the wall clock quit. 8:13. I stared at the dead minute, and the dead minute stared back. 8 minutes later, the second hand ticked like nothing had happened. And just like that, the city had another ghost. Or I finally heard the one it already had. Let me walk you back without dragging you through the gravel. The worst night of my career didn't end when we found her. It ended 72 hours after, when the hallway outside major crimes filled with a sound I wouldn't wish on the man who took her. We talk about closure like it's a door. It's not. It's a window you don't remember closing that smashes in a storm 10 years later. Paperwork cuts deeper than knives when the name at the top is 8 years old. After the trial, policy changed. Training changed. Dispatch scripts. Response escalations. Retail protocols that should have been inked years before. Every memo read like a promise to a photograph. I stayed for a while, watched the machine learn to be kinder, faster, meaner when it needed to be. And I told myself it was enough. Then the anomalies kept coming. First, it was the clock. Then the CCTV at a Lem Turner pawn shop flickered at 8:13 p.m. 3 Tuesdays in a row, like the system refused to record that minute. The owner swore it never happened before. Next, the river patrol calls. Fishermen hearing a girl laugh near the pilings by Broward Road, with no boats within half a mile. Just tidewater and mullet. Ghost stories, sure. Florida makes ghost stories, like palmettos make roaches. But these all had a calendar, dates that mattered. A season of grief returning like hurricane rain. I didn't mark anniversaries. Couldn't. The body keeps score, and my body was already covered in chalk lines nobody else could see. But I started marking every time something nudged the living world at 8:13, not public. Pencil marks behind my pantry calendar like a prisoner counting days. When the marks filled a column, I called someone I shouldn't have, Her name is Nora, civilian researcher, extraordinary pain in the department's neck when a case crossed over into the weird. She'd crawl through data. We were too proud to touch electromagnetic logs, dispatch desyncs, skywave skip on AM bands. Nobody liked how often she was right. I didn't like that she was usually right for reasons I couldn't take into court. After retirement, I owed nobody my pride, so I said the name. I told her about the clock and the whisper and the fish who favored the wrong tide. She didn't laugh. You expecting me to bless it or burn it? She asked, neither. I want the pattern. You already have it, she said. You just want permission to see it. There are 2 Floridas if you don't count the franchise version on postcards. There's the one above water yards, churches, pawn shops, the sizzle of parking lots, and the one below water where the river keeps what the city can't bear. They talk to each other more than we admit. Between them is a seam where things slip, words, intentions, sometimes people. Nora said human intention is noisy enough to leave a scar in the grid. And when a city focuses that noise, tens of thousands of eyes on one child's face for one terrible orbit, it can bruise the time around it. Not magic, not religion. Pressure-denting soft metal. I don't do hauntings, I said. You do evidence, she said. Call this evidence of attention. She pulled call logs, blackout reports, retail network pings, traffic light diagnostics. She layered them over a calendar of events the city would rather not laminate. It looked like a storm map. Red where the noise topped thresholds that should have stayed academic, green where it thinned. 8 letters, 13 strokes if you draw the name a certain way, she said. I told her to quit while she was almost helpful. She told me to quit pretending the grid didn't flinch when we did. I don't sleep well. My dreams are a supermarket loudspeaker, announcing a name nobody can make themselves hear in time. So when a woman left a note at my P.O. Box no return address, just block letters, you got her clock too? I folded it slow. Inside was a receipt from a North Side Walmart dated 10 years to the week since the worst night, stamped with a time that shouldn't have been possible. The register's internal clock read 8:13 3 times in 1 minute. The total rung twice before settling. The cashier wrote a smiley face beside the name of a customer whose name wasn't printed. People think horror is knives and footsteps. Horror is misprinted ink. I took the receipt to the store manager, a man with a jaw like a stop sign and the patience of a chaplain. He'd been there then. He'd seen the before and after of a place that learned to live with its own echoes. He showed me a binder of protocols, retrained staff, new signage that had cost someone their bonus and earned someone else a sleep. He'd seen the grid change the law from the bottom up. What could happen now could not happen then. Not for the same reasons, not with the same blind spots. Still, he said, touching the receipt with 2 fingers like it was holy or radioactive, there are days the lights hum wrong. Power company, I said. Or memory, he said. Either way, we keep them brighter. On my drive home, the sun dragged its knuckles over the skyline. I passed the church whose parking lot had been a staging ground for tears. The lot was empty, the cross lit against the coming dark, the grass too neatly cut for a weekday. I parked anyway. I told myself I was looking for wind patterns. I was looking for forgiveness. A janitor unlocked the side door for me, gave me a nod that suggested he'd met a lot of men looking for the same thing, and none of them had left with it in their pocket. Inside, the sanctuary smelled like wood polish and old paper. I sat in the 5th pew back, aisle seat, because that's where men who don't want to be seen by God sit. A mother started to sing in the cry room, soft and off-key. The tune was familiar, a lullaby. For 8 seconds, the lights in the ceiling buzzed at a frequency that made my teeth itch. Then they settled. I checked my watch. 8:13? Okay, I said aloud. It wasn't prayer. It was a truce. On the way out, I dropped a 20 in a box, I hadn't seen on my way in. There was a note taped to it, handwritten. For children, we will never fail again. A promise pretending to be a fund. I wrote my own note on the back of a grocery list, the mundane sharing paper with the sacred. We are trying, I wrote. I don't know who I was trying to convince. Nora called as I sat in the car. You still want the pattern? She asked. I thought you said I already had it. I have a better one, not superstition systemic change. I pulled the training modules, the retail response matrices, the dispatcher scripts before and after. The law didn't just change in court. It changed in the scenes where people do or don't ask the right questions in time. Show me, I said, tomorrow. But tonight, do me a favor. What kind of favor? Drive the Broward stretch. If you hear a child laugh, don't stop this time. Keep going. The dead don't want your headlights. They want you to fix the living's playbook. Are we talking about ghosts or guilt? I asked. Same sound, she said. Different translators. On Broward Road, the river moves like it knows secrets, and the palmettos lean in to listen. I rolled the window down half an inch and let the damp air touch the worst part of me. I didn't hear laughter. I heard cicadas stitching the dark together, and one distant truck on the interstate, a heartbeat out of frame. I kept driving, not because I'm brave, because I've learned what I can and can't fix. Back home, the clock on the wall was fine. The radio was off, the pelican still judging me. I took a pen and wrote 8 words on the first page of a fresh legal pad. We changed the law. The law changed us. Then I added a 9th, almost. It's an ugly word. It's also honest. Almost saved is not saved. Almost safe is not safe. Ask any parent what almost means when the world tilts. Maybe you want a cleaner ending to this first piece. I don't have one. What I have is the promise I opened with. By the time we're done, you'll know why the law had to change and why it will keep needing to. You'll see what the radio caught and what the grid remembers and why an old man like me still keeps a porch light on for neighbors, for stray cats, for the part of the city that knows how to find its way home when we finally make the path clear enough. I'll give you jokes where I can my ex, as my sense of humor is like my hairline, receding but still technically present. I'll give you the weather, the heat that makes kneecaps ache, the specifics of a training line item that should be gospel, and the name of the person who put it there. And I'll give you my hand where the recording stutters, the pen where the ink runs thin. If you're still here, good. Breathe. Next, we go into the rooms where the new questions live, the ones that stop bad things before they can practice being inevitable. And we talk about a kindness that arrived too late for one child and exactly on time for the next. If you want to hear the living, read the policy. If you want to hear the dead, read the places where the policy almost worked. Tonight, the line between them is a dispatcher's breath and a cashier's hand over a mute button. The new playbook didn't arrive in a parade. It arrived in bullet points, laminated. It arrived in a headset whisper. Supervisor on, stay with me, describe the child. Keep eyes on the door. It arrived in a rule that says the first 60 seconds are precious enough to make strangers family. That's how laws really change quietly, in rooms with fluorescent lights and coffee that tastes like pencils. You asked why the law had to change. Not because evil got smarter, because our response learned to move faster, wider, louder together. Call takers trained to skip out and jump to deployment, cart activation staged like SWAT for childhood, and retail floors coached to treat too good to be true, like a fire alarm, not a favor. Nora set me up in a windowless conference room with a projector and a stack of binders that could paper a crime scene. She lives on acronyms the way I live on analogies. CART, CAD, EMD. She clicked through a flowchart where every arrow meant fewer seconds spent arguing with uncertainty. On paper, it looked like overkill. In the world, it looked like not waiting to be perfect before you were useful. "Listen to this," she said, and played an audio slice from a training lab. A caller, a manager on a retail floor, voice thin as a receipt. There's a man offering shoes. He says he knows someone at corporate. He's taking them to the food area to wait. The clock says 8:09 p.m. The old playbook would have told the manager to watch, to be polite, to avoid escalating a situation that might just be kindness badly dressed. The new one jumps the rails. The dispatcher flags the supervisor, triggers a checklist, description broadcast to patrol, sex offender list pull within half-mile, internal security to intercept, exits covered, amber pre-criteria warming on the stove if needed. What made the difference? I asked. Authority, Nora said. Not the kind you salute. The kind that lets the first person on scene believe their fear is a fact to act on. Explicit permission to be wrong in the right direction. She has the gift of saying in a sentence what takes a career to learn. I thought of a cashier I'd met the week before, the one who drew a smiley on a receipt that printed the wrong time 3 times. She told me the smiley was for her proof she'd been there in case anyone ever asked. We used to call that CYA. Now it's witness care. You hold the moment because the moment will be asked to testify later, and paper is the last honest person in the room. Nora slid over a laminated card the size of a postcard. Front. Questions for any adult with a child who doesn't appear to belong to them. How do you know each other? What's the child's name? Can the child confirm? Back. Immediate escalation triggers adult answers for the child. Offers that hinge on free goods. Directs movement away from cameras and registers. Sudden insistence on leaving via unfamiliar exits. Minimal friction. Maximal alarm routes. Retail isn't law enforcement, but it can be the first gate that doesn't swing open for a wolf in neighbor's clothing. There's a stubborn myth that law is a switch. On-off, legal, illegal. But what saved a kid 3 months ago at a plaza undone wasn't a statute. It was the choreography the statute inspired. A caller who didn't apologize for bothering 911. A dispatcher who didn't tell them to call store security and hang up. A supervisor who opened a checklist like a parachute. A patrol car that treated a shopping center like the last place a child would be seen, not the least likely place a crime would happen. Watch this, Nora said, and pulled a heat map of notifications for missing endangered child calls over 12 months. Before the changes, calls clustered late after conferrals, after a manager found a boss. After is where grief lives. After is where clocks stop. After is where memorials are born. Post-change, the colors moved forward by an average of 8 minutes. 8 minutes isn't a moral. It's an opportunity big enough for a car to clear an exit and small enough for a trained employee to ask a question that makes a predator blink. I made a bad joke about my own blink time. These days I need 8 minutes to find my glasses. She smiled the way you smile at a man who's trying not to fall apart in front of a spreadsheet. It's not perfect, she said, but it's honest about what we can do fast. Dispatch protocols aren't romance. They're triage for uncertainty. We walk through scenarios the way fire marshals walk through old theaters. Where do people panic? Where does smoke pool? The retail scenarios asked something different. Where does politeness kill time? Where does kindness camouflage control? The new scripts pull the mask off. An adult who distances the child from any identity check. A phone call to mom where the adult answers both ends. A promise of food, shoes, rides, doorways wrapped like gifts. I thought of the river again. I think about it too much. If you live here long enough, you learn which places collect things, branches, bottles, stories. Policy wants to believe it can drain the river. It can't, but it can move the sticks that catch the worst of what floats downstream. It can put nets where absence likes to pass. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, that's enough to make absence late to its own appointment. Late that afternoon, we sat with a dispatcher named Henry, who'd been on the board for 23 years. He talked in sentences with the breathing already built into them. Dispatchers are metronomes. They can hear your panic and hand you theirs at half speed until it matches a tempo you can survive. He walked me through the new notice chain. You don't wait to confirm a parent if you have reasonable endangerment. You notify a supervisor now, not after the call. You run vicinity checks for prior calls and registered offenders while you're still talking. You open the shared channel to get eyes off sight in case the exit isn't the front door. What changed you the most? I asked. Permission, he said, the same word Nora used. We got permission to believe the first story the scared person told us, not the polite story the situation wanted us to believe. And we got graded on speed without being punished for lighting up resources that turned out not to be needed. If I'm going to be wrong, I want to be wrong with a helicopter in the air, not a memo on my desk. That night on the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. The clock on the dash was honest. No frozen minutes. On Main Street, a crossing guard waved off a rush of cars like she had the deed to the road. Authority again. The kind that protects the small without asking permission from the large. At the light, a woman in a blue vest walked a lost boy toward the customer service desk, her hand not on his shoulder, but near it, visible, witness, safe. You learn to notice these small choreography changes when you've spent years documenting where movement goes wrong. I stopped at a diner that serves coffee with the moral clarity of a court order. The waitress called me hun and meant it. On the TV above the counter, a segment about a recovered child played without sound. The closed captions rolled through policy words the way a hymnal rolls through amens. Interim. Interim means we are not done. Interim means keep your shoes by the door. Back home, the porch light did its small good. I poured a drink I didn't finish. I stood at the window long enough to feel silly. The city hummed. Somewhere a squad car chirped its siren, just enough to remind the night it had competition. I thought about calling someone I used to be married to and decided to let us both rest. I opened a fresh page and wrote, "We learned to arrive sooner," then underlined it twice. Then added, "Start the search where kindness looks like a cover." Around 8:13, because of course that's when my phone buzzed. "Nora, check your email," she said. Subject line, Broward. "You're going to want to see this." It was a report from earlier that evening, 4 miles from where she'd told me to keep driving the night before. A caller from a strip mall had reported a man trying to coax a child toward a side exit with the promise of snacks in his truck. The new script fired. The description went out before the second sentence landed. A patrol unit already near the on-ramp turned in, blocked the side lane, and the man pivoted like guilt does when it learns the old path is closed. They intercepted, separated adult and child, asked the simple questions. The adult answered for the child. That's a trigger now. It should have always been. It is today. They held him. The child went home. Nothing on the news. That's how victories happen here, quiet, on time. I wish that could be the end of it. A tidy ribbon on a messy box. But the part of the story that lives between electricity and memory doesn't care for ribbons. That night, the kitchen clock faltered again. 8 minutes, 13 seconds of something like reverence. The second hand paused, then shivered forward like it had remembered the future. I stood there, the porch light throwing a square of yellow on the floor. "We saw you," I said into the hum. "We learned." Maybe that's what the grid wanted. Maybe it was just bad wiring in an old house, owned by a man who can't afford better. Both are true some nights. I turned the radio on, softly, low enough to pretend it was the neighbors. A late-night show drifted in about emergency, communications upgrades, and how the next revolution isn't faster towers, but better listening text in 911, integrated data pings, dispatcher triage that treats the call as the scene, not the prelude. A revolution you can't put on a billboard, because it lives in pauses and checklists and someone saying, "Stay on the line. I'm with you," at exactly the right second. I slept. Not well. Not long. Enough. In the morning, I found another note in the P.O. box. Different hand this time. Careful cursive. I was there then. I'm here now. I hear 813 too. No return address. Just a stamp of a lighthouse. I slid the paper into my wallet like a man tucks a saint into his dashboard. The radio didn't sing any names. The clock behaved. For a day, the world pretended to be repaired. Next, we go to the floor. Not the courtroom. Those stories have their Bibles. The grocery aisles, the shoe rows, the exits no one uses until someone needs them. We'll walk them with a manager who almost made the old mistake and now teaches the new reflex. And we'll test the promise that the law changed us as much as it changed itself. The floor is linoleum and fluorescent and built to pretend danger doesn't know how to use a shopping cart. But danger shops like the rest of us. The only question is whether the greeter knows how to stop the sale. Tonight isn't about the courtroom. It's about the entrance mats, the returns desk, the side exits with the 3 broken letters on the exit sign. It's about a laminated card on a lanyard and a rule that says your politeness ends where a child's safety begins. Here's the promise. You'll walk the aisles with a manager who almost waited in the old days and now teaches the new reflex. You'll hear the exact questions and the trigger behaviors, and you'll see how a law becomes muscle memory before it ever becomes a headline. Her name is Marisol. She manages the kind of big box store where the ceiling looks like a rib cage and the intercom voice sounds like a cousin you don't trust with your debit card. She took the job 12 years ago for the benefits and learned, against the odds, to love the theater of it. She's the one who organizes the break room bulletin board so birthdays don't hide behind recalls. She's also the reason a boy went home 2 months back without ever knowing he'd been on a bad man's itinerary that night. Marisol carries a small deck of cards on a coil. Fronts are colorful safety, loss prevention, fire. Backs are doctrine. On the child safety card, the back starts with 3 questions and ends with permission. You are authorized to intervene verbally and to escalate immediately when your indicators trigger. She says the word authorized like a prayer and a dare. First change? She says, walking me past shoe aisles that smell like fresh rubber and false promises. We don't let kindness buy time anymore. An adult offering a child free goods is a trigger. An adult answering for a child is a trigger. Moving toward low traffic areas or side exits is a trigger. Before, you'd watch. Now, you move radio, a code word, close distance. Ask the questions the script gives you. Keep them where the cameras are. And hit the escalation ladder without apologizing to the manager who thinks you're making a scene. She shows me the side exit where the air feels different cool, poured from a concrete jug. This door used to be an idea, she says. Now it's a locale in our heads. We post someone here Friday nights. We map the parking patterns. We know who leaves a car too close to the curb with the engine pretending to be tired. We don't chase. We block with presence and questions. Loss prevention used to be a game of chess with folks who stuffed ribeye down their coats. This isn't that. Marisol's team doesn't put hands on anyone unless life is at stake and policy is clear. But they are trained to interrupt the story a predator is trying to tell the room. Stories are how bad people move, she says. We learn to write our own, louder. She points at the intercom. One phrase calls a manager. Another calls a cluster of associates to casually drift near the danger and fill the air with witnesses. We practice the questions. How do you two know each other? Asked bright, not accusatory. What's his name? Directed to the child. Do you want to walk with me to customer service? An invitation that puts the adult on notice that the stage has changed. The script is theater, sure, but theater protects when reality wants to blur. The moment the adult answers for the child, Marisol clicks a pen 3 times, their code to start the escalation chain. Near the registers, a greeter named Henry Different Henry, the dispatch stands like a grandfather clock that learned to smile. He's been retrained twice this year on the updated child protection module. New indicators, faster handoffs, cleaner language on when to call 911 from the floor, not from the manager's office where seconds suffocate. Biggest difference? I ask him. I got told I'm not being rude, he says. I'm being responsible. The lanyard card gives him cover, so his courage doesn't have to do the whole job. Policy isn't courage, but it makes courage cheaper to spend in public. Marisol shows me the staff app. Yes, they have an app that bundles suspicious person reports, nearest patrol contact, a one-tap that pings the front door camera to highlight playback markers. It's not sci-fi. It's a grocery list of good ideas in one basket. When the new law language shook out, it didn't just change sentencing. It changed how many people are allowed to say, "No, sir, we're staying right here," without clearing it with a manager who might be in the back doing counts. We walk to the food area. It's impossible not to feel the echo of a story the city wishes had been interrupted in time. The tables are anchored now, no easy line of sight obstructions. 2 cameras replaced one. The cleanup station moved, so an associate is always within earshot of a child's voice, calling a name that doesn't get an answer. Even the signage reads different. If you need help, ask any associate. We are here to protect you. It's corny until it isn't. Marisol laughs easily, but it's a working laugh. I tell my team this. We sell things, but our product is time. We buy time for the right people. She's right. Every good policy on this topic is a time machine pointed in the only direction that matters, backward, toward the minutes where choices still compound in our favor. We stage a drill. An associate named Theo plays the adult. He's too charming by half and knows it. A volunteer from seasonal plays the child with admirable seriousness. Theo offers a deal. The greeter greets. The associate appears from a restock. Marisol approaches with a smile made of iron filings. The questions land. Theo tries to answer for the child. The pen clicks 3 times. The radio hums and returns a crisp copy. Eyes on. The side exit accumulates a wall of friendly bodies. No one touches anyone. The story Theo brought into the building runs out of stage. After, in her office, Marisol points at a framed certificate cart partner training completion and a photo of her team holding cheap sheet cake like it was a trophy. We don't get medals for the days nothing happens, she says. But those are the days I sleep. We're not cops. But the law reached us through a checklist and gave us a job we can do with a smile. She turns the certificate to dust the frame and leaves it slightly off-center on purpose, because nothing about this is perfect, and because perfect is the enemy of on time. On my way out, the clock over the service desk ticks loud for no good reason, the way some clocks do when the room is otherwise honest. I check the minute. 8:12. I wait. No falter. At 8:13, an associate bumps the counter with her hip and laughs at a joke I didn't hear. The minute passes like any other. Not every echo is a haunting. Some are just the building learning a new song. I step into the Florida night, and it breathes on me like a dog that loves you more than you love yourself. In the lot, a patrol car idles under no one's orders, just orbiting. Authority, again, showing up where people shop, because that's where people live. I drive past the side exit and raise 2 fingers off the steering wheel, the way old men do when they've seen enough to know gratitude should be casual. The radio stays off. The porch light back home waits like a promise I can afford. At the house, the Pelican is still judging me from the counter. I open the legal pad to a fresh page and write, "Don't let kindness buy time." Then, make witnesses fast. Then, because I'm sentimental when I'm tired, teach greeters to be guardians. It reads corny on paper. It lands like policy on a floor where the lights hum right. Tomorrow, Nora says. We visit dispatch again, this time for the console view during a real call, the kind that arrives already breathing hard. And after that, if the city will let me, we'll stand on a riverbank where people say they hear a child, laugh at 8:13, and decide together whether the sound is memory, miracle, or a circuit remembering how to carry a name without breaking, how to carry a name without breaking. The next rescue starts before the phone rings. It lives in the wiring, in the map the console draws, in the permission a dispatcher has to believe fear fast. Tonight we sit at the console during a real call, the kind that arrives breathing hard and changing its mind mid-sentence. You'll hear how Next-Gen 911 eats panic and returns coordinates, how a unified center and closest unit rules cut the apology out of response, and how a cell phone camera can become a sworn witness in under a minute. Promise. By the end of this minute, you'll know why technology without policy is just a pretty screen, and how the right statute turns screens into seconds you can stand on. Then we'll see what happens when 813 walks into the room and refuses to sit down. The console is a cockpit built by people who believe in too many backups. Good. The wall renders the county in a way only birds and dispatchers get to see: grids, units, symbols that flash when a life leans wrong. Henry the metronome with 23 years slides me a spare headset. Listen, don't talk, he says, which is funny, because that's marriage advice too. A call hits. Female, shallow breaths, retail strip. She can't say 911 the first time. It comes out 9. Help. The system grabs her number. The tower draws the blue dot where we can use it. It isn't magic. It's NG911 piping data over an ESI net so the console can see more than a voice can say. The screen offers the nearest units. The policy offers the word now. What do you see? Henry asks, hands already moving, flagging supervisor, opening the shared channel, soft paging a nearby school resource officer off duty, but within 3 blocks. I see a person who doesn't want to make a scene, I say. He nods. We'll make it for her. He types while he talks, calm as a museum guard. Ma'am, you can text me if you need to. If talking is unsafe, text YES and your nearest store sign. The console is ready for text and video. This county paid for the tools because the sheriff believes seconds don't have a party registration. A text arrives. Yes. Then a shaky, blessedly boring video, 3 seconds of flooring, a shelf edge, a shoe. It's enough. The app anchors the aisle. The closest unit pivots hard. Closest wins now by statute language and agreements that used to be handshake folklore. No more jurisdiction hopscotch while a bad man walks a child toward a side door. On the shared channel, patrol calls eyes on. The manager joins by phone. He doesn't downplay. He doesn't ask if maybe this is a misunderstanding. He recites the new checklist like a grocery list he's not ashamed to carry. Adult answering for child, free items offer, movement to low traffic area. We're staying by customer service, he adds, and you can hear how policy has rewired his politeness. In the old days, meaning 5 years ago in some places, the call would have bounced between centers or been transferred to a different jurisdiction with the right patch cord. This is Florida, and on a good day, we like to unify fire with fire and let turf argue later. The draft language making the rounds is bolder. Consolidate call taking, prohibit transfers, and dispatch the closest unit by rule, not luck. You can feel that future in the room already, like a storm an hour out changing how the oaks stand. The caller's breathing slows. That's not therapy. That's a console doing math, while a human lends out calm at prime rates. Henry keeps her talking about nothing that matters, a snack display, whether the store feels cold, because he knows panic hates small talk. He keeps the channel open for the units, so they can inhale the room through her words and land on the right aisle with the right posture. Unit 23, hold the side exit, Henry says. Unit 12. Approach with store manager. No hands unless life is threatened. Policy again, making courage cheaper. On screen, the two dots converge. And for a second, the map is a prayer you can read without shame. They separate adult and child. The officer asks the questions to the child first, because that's the new script, and also the old morality. The adult answers anyway. Too quick, answers both ends, tries to drag the scene into the parking lot with words. The scene refuses to move. The camera sees. The policy holds. The child goes behind the counter with an associate who knows how to make a corner into a fortress with nothing but a smile and a lanyard. The arrest isn't loud. That's for TV. The loud part happens inside the caller, the part that untwists when she realizes the worst thing did not get to happen tonight. Henry thanks her like she delivered a baby in the back of a cab. In a way, she delivered herself back into a city that knew how to hear her fast. After the call, the room exhales in a way you only notice if you've been a failure before. Henry mutes his mic, rolls his shoulders. Closest unit doctrine should have been boring 30 years ago, he says. We made it interesting for too long. He points at the consolidation language making its way through committees. That makes boring possible. I like boring. Boring is a kid going home for homework. On the drive home, I try not to look at clocks, which is like trying not to think about your tongue. At a red light, my phone pings a public notice from the county. Text to 911 available. Voice preferred. The phrasing is careful, the promise quiet. We'll meet you where you are, but we'll tell you what's best. That's adulthood, institutionalized. Back at the house, the kitchen clock doesn't stall. The radio, for once, behaves like an appliance instead of a priest. I half expect the grid to congratulate us, to flicker at 8:13 in solidarity. It doesn't. Maybe that's the compliment. Maybe silence is how a city says keep doing that. I call Nora. We just watched the future, I tell her. We watched the present that took too long to arrive, she says. Now do the past a favor. Put it on paper so the next person doesn't have to guess the steps. I open the legal pad. Right, closest unit by rule. Unified call taking. Text video when voice is unsafe. Then, because I'm still me, I add, teach small talk as a tactical skill. She'll roll her eyes. She'll also underline it when she thinks I'm not looking. Tomorrow is the river. The skeptics, the believers, the place where the wind carries laughter that might be electrons misbehaving or grief remembering its lines. Either way, we'll stand there at 8:13 and see if the city still needs us to hear it. Some places collect sound the way ponds collect leaves. Stand long enough at the Broward stretch of river, and the wind will hand you a laugh that doesn't belong to your century. Call it grief with good acoustics or electricity with a memory. Every city has a spot where the living swear the air edits itself at a certain minute. Ours picked 8:13, like a scar that insists on the exact shape of the wound. Promise, we'll stand there at 8:13 with a skeptic's pockets and a believer's patience. Then walk away with an answer, useful enough to change what happens in aisles and call centers where seconds matter more than stories. Nora hates bugs and comes anyway. If one of these mosquitoes asks for my pin, I'm leaving, she says, and that's how you know she's nervous. We park near the pilings on Broward Road, where the river pretends to be calm. The light does that late afternoon Florida thing gold that forgives you for everything until it doesn't. I bring a portable recorder, not because I expect ghosts, but because ghosts respect documentation. The shoreline smells like mud, diesel, and a memory I can't name. You want science or story first? She asks. I want not to feel stupid, I say. Too late, she says, and smiles, because being friends with Nora is consenting to be corrected by humor. A fisherman 50 yards down shouts at the river in a way only men who are happy while failing can shout. A couple walks a dog that looks like it chose them. Somewhere behind us, tires hiss over the bridge, indifferent to whatever ceremony we think we're performing. We check watches. 8:10. We make small talk about diners and divorces, and the things middle-aged people pretend not to miss. At 8:13, the wind picks up like someone plugged it in. The palmettos whisper. Then the laugh. It's small and not joyful, not unjoyful, either just a release valve noise the size of a child. It doesn't come from the water, or the trees, or the bridge. It comes from the angle where all three pretend not to meet. The recorder catches it as a spike that looks like a tooth. I don't turn to Nora because turning makes it a cartoon. Explain, I say. M coupling on the bridge. AM skip, barge batteries, harmonics off the pilings, she says, reciting the catechism of the modern rationalist. Then softer. And pressure. Collective attention puts a dent in the air. Dense playback. I don't want it to be a ghost, because ghosts are terrible at policy. You can't legislate a frequency. You can't arrest a dent. But you can listen to a city long enough to hear where it holds its breath and make sure that's where you put your resources. If people gather here at 8:13, then tonight someone else gets an extra patrol at 8:13, somewhere that isn't pretty. That's how you translate miracle into memo. Nora kneels and touches the water like she's checking a child's forehead. If we're wrong, she says, we're wrong in the direction of presence. Is that your religion? I ask. It's my policy, she says. We stay until the mosquitoes form a union. On the walk back, a group of teens with scooters rolls past, all elbows and laughter, engineering their own 8:13 with snacks and gossip. On the radio in someone's car, a station bumpers into the hour. The voice says, "Stay with us," and for a second, I hear it as instruction, not invitation. In the parking pull-off, a man about my age leans on his trunk like he's waiting for an answer the river owes him. You hear it? He asks. We heard something, I say. He nods like that's the correct theology. My wife says it's silly. I say the river remembers for us when we're busy. He points to the sky. We can't carry everything. True, I say, and then because I'm trying to be better at the part where I don't hoard wisdom, I add, we're making sure the right people carry the right minutes now. You cops? He asks. Used to be, I say. Now I'm just a man who writes things down. Good, he says. Writing is how the living haunt the future. I put that in my pocket for later. Back home, the recorder spits out the waveform, nothing to show a skeptic except a spike and my own breathing. The clock doesn't falter, which I decide to take as approval. I call Nora, and we do the debrief that has saved us both from our worst ideas more than once. If the city wants us to keep paying attention at 8:13, fine. But we'll spend that attention on training, checklists, presence. Every ritual must buy something real, or it's just a hobby with candles. You're going to write about the river? She asks. Only if I can make it pay for a class. I say. She laughs. Make it pay for 2. The next day is training day, guest speaker duty. Marisol invited me to talk to her new hires, and the old hands who know more than I do but like to hear their own courage spoken back to them with a badge on it. I show them the wireframe of the call we witnessed, the quiet pivot where the closest unit doctrine saves minutes, the way a smile and a stay with me can close a door without making a scene. I don't mention the river. Not because I'm embarrassed, because the river has already done its job on me. Now I have to do mine on them. I bring the lanyard cards and the permission word. Authorized. I say it like a man knocking on his own chest, so the room hears it in their ribs. I tell them the story of a quiet save with no headline, and I watch the ones with kids write faster. I make a joke about my coffee having a restraining order light, a breath between heavies. They laugh because they need to. When the session ends, a young associate waits until the room is mostly empty. I was here then, she says. Not this store. Another. I was 16. I thought I should mind my business. I don't anymore. The room has good air. The kind that makes you forgive yourself, just enough to do better next time. In the evening, I drive by the church again and don't go in. The porch light still works. I write on the pad, presence at the right minute. Then, translate superstition into staffing. Then, don't let ritual eat resources. It reads like a sermon scribbled on a grocery list. It feels like a law learning to be human. At 8:13, nothing happens. And that's the best thing that happened all day? Tomorrow we visit someone. I've avoided the prosecutor who turned a courtroom into a metronome and wrote closing words that moved pens in places I never sit. She'll talk about statutes and standards, but underneath, she'll be talking about permission again, the kind that lets a jury believe the first story the scared witness tells them, not the polite one the defense wants to rehearse. Then we'll bring it home, the ledger, the porch light, the reason the law had to change, and why it keeps needing to. In a state where the heat wins arguments and the river remembers your name, even when you don't want it to. Courtrooms don't fix the past, they warn the future. The only question is whether the warning is loud enough to be heard in a break room with a flickering light. Tonight we sit across from the prosecutor, who turned grief into standards and standards into sentences. You'll hear how statutes are really scripts for the living, how jury instructions become lanyard cards, and why closest unit by rule isn't just dispatch doctrine. It's a closing argument hiding in plain sight. Promise. By the end you'll see how a courtroom's words reach retail floors and radio consoles, and why the law had to change to authorize ordinary people to act without asking permission they don't need. Her name is Dana, and if resolve were a fabric, she'd be upholstered in it. Her office has two kinds of light, hard from the window and soft from a lamp that knows when to stay out of the way. On the wall is a framed jury instruction about evaluating witness credibility, and next to it, a photograph of a playground that looks like a promise made of plastic and bolts. People think the verdict is the point, she says, stirring tea like it told her a secret. The point is the policy it licenses. She means this literally. A guilty verdict in the kind of case we carry in our bones becomes an exhibit for every training that follows. That verdict is why a dispatcher can say, "Stay on the line," why a manager can ask a child's name directly, why a patrol car can block a side exit first and apologize to nobody later. Dana keeps a binder titled Bridge Pages that translate court to street. She opens to a tab marked Plain Words. If your policy can't be read at a register in 30 seconds, it's a feeling, not a rule. She cites the chapters of child protection law that sound dry until you hear them as permission. Prioritize safety, consider credible risk, limit removal by abusers, assign costs to the person who creates the danger. The words are engineered to be carried by people who can't carry law books on shift. What changed you? I ask. A motion I lost, she says. Years back, I tried to get a child pickup order after a parent concealed a kid during a time-sharing dispute. Judge said the statute didn't give enough teeth unless I met this high threshold, which was right for then, wrong for always. I rewired my head that day. We needed intermediate tools, civil remedies, clearer triggers for supervised contact, passport holds, and we needed the culture to stop calling overreaction what was actually timely reaction. She flips to a draft from the legislature that would let a left-behind parent sue civilly after unlawful concealment past 30 days. Not our scenario tonight, but the same DNA, the law moving to fill the hours where harm grows. When policy learns to fight in the right weight class, kids stop being the ring. Donna test drives closing arguments like a mechanic listening for a rattle. Juries want to be authorized too, she says. They want you to say, you can believe the first story the fear told you, so the instruction matters. The words credible risk matter. They become retail scripts. They become dispatch checklists. They become fence posts in a park where kids get to run without adults doing math in their heads about exits. We talk about the quiet revolution in call-taking and closest unit doctrine, moving from best practice to written expectation. A statute is a conversation between strangers, she says. When it says closest, it's telling two agencies to love the same child faster than they love their turf. She smiles at her own poetry and winces at it too. In the hallway outside her office is a corkboard of thank you notes in messy crayons and careful cursive. Some are from wins. More are from almosts. It didn't get worse. Law doesn't advertise the almosts. It should. That's where change lives in the minutes that didn't make the news because someone with a lanyard and a checklist made a scene at the right size. On my way out, Donna hands me a one-pager she gives to civic groups. If you see something that tastes wrong, act like you have the rule book in your pocket, it says at the top. It lists 3 calls to make and the order to make them. It says, use your name, because witnesses who introduce themselves become people instead of voices. It says, stay where the cameras are, because rooms remember better than parking lots. It says, you're not being rude. You're being responsible. I've heard those words before on a retail floor. That's the point. I ask if she ever hears 813. She doesn't blink. Every prosecutor has a number, she says. That one isn't mine. Mine is the minute a jury files back in. That minute is a weather system. If I've done my job, it rains where it should. She looks at the playground photo. The law had to change because grief kept showing us where we were late. It will keep changing because the living will keep telling us where we're still late. Courts aren't clocks. People are. My job is to set them as close to right as I can and get out of the way. On the sidewalk, the heat lifts off the concrete like a memory. I sit in the car and let the air run until it stops smelling like paper. Back home, the porch light earns its wage for the 1,000th night in a row. The kitchen clock stays honest. I write on the pad, translate verdicts into verbs. Then, permission is policy is courage. Then, because I can't help myself, closest means love without directions. Tomorrow, we draw the circle closed. The grid, the floor, the console, the courtroom, the river. We tally what changed and write down what still needs it. We pay the ledger. And if the radio sings a name at 813, we tell it what it wants to hear. We're early now. Policy changes the room. People change the street. If you want a city to keep its promises at 813, teach neighbors to hear seconds and officers to spend authority like it's not theirs to hoard. Tonight is the circle. Community, patrol, training, and the tiny rituals that make strangers useful to each other. You'll see what community policing looks like when it isn't a brochure citizens in academies, officers learning to talk before they drive, and partnerships that make closest unit feel like common sense, not a miracle. Promise. By the end, you'll have a list you can take to your precinct, your store, your HOA, and ask for by name. Then we'll head to the last file to pay the ledger and leave the porch light on. The Community Law Enforcement Academy meets in a classroom that smells like dry erase markers and optimism. Seminole County runs one. So do a dozen agencies you've never sat with, but complain about when your porch camera picks up a raccoon. Civilians sit in chairs, usually occupied by rookies, learning how calls stack, how patrol routes get drawn, how a dispatcher's standby isn't indifference, but triage. A captain stands up front and says the line every good captain eventually means, help us help you help them. Then they show videos that should be boring, but aren't how a call goes from ring to radio to road. How a field training officer teaches a rookie to park where the cameras can see their questions, not just their car. Gainesville calls it blocks of community policing. Everywhere, it's the same sermon with different coffee. In the break, a woman in a church T-shirt asks about side exits at her local big box. Marisol would love her. The captain pulls up a slide on partnerships with retail managers. What a courtesy walkthrough looks like. Who to call for a joint drill that doesn't scare customers, but does scare habits that hurt kids. This isn't photo op policing. It's choreography with neighbors, a way to replace folklore with phone trees. Out in the lot, a deputy lets participants climb into a cruiser and work the radio with the power turned off role play. No risk. The deputy talks about the calls that keep them up kids, always kids, and the ones that put them back to sleep kids home, small thank yous in crayon. You can build legitimacy with billboards. You keep it with small, true minutes like this. After the academy night, Nora and I meet a consultant who's been stitching cities to their police for decades. He talks about community-oriented policing like it's both science and hospitality. Recruit for temperament, not just test scores. Promote people who build bridges. Train everyone, not just the designated community officer, to treat engagement as part of the job, not a hobby. What do you want from me? He asks. A grocery list, I say. Things to ask for that aren't slogans. He gives me 5. Monthly walk-through with store managers on triggers and exits, with dispatch looped by name, not number. Public training on when and how to call 911 or text if voice is unsafe, with a demo console at community nights. Recruit interviews that weight empathy and communication as heavily as marksmanship. Field training that grades on de-escalation and witness-making. Standing closest unit agreements with neighboring agencies, written, hosted, and drilled with citizens as observers. A faith and civic liaison network that can move people faster than press releases. Can because trust answers phones quicker than emails do. Put that in your story, he says. Make them ask for it. If a city can order a food truck festival, it can order this. We leave with a flyer for the next academy and a promise to bring donuts. Because nothing says, we mean it like carbs. On the drive home, the night feels like someone finally ironed it. The grid hums, but it's the hum of a fridge that's working, not a wire about to fail. At 8:13, I'm at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen that writes like it wants me to be better. A clock doesn't stall. The radio is off. I list the circle, plain as groceries. The floor, triggers, permission, presence. The console, closest by rule, text video when voice can't. The courtroom, verdicts turn into verbs. Plain words travel. The community, academies, liaisons, drills that feel like potlucks. Then I write the one thing that scares me most, because it demands the most of the living. Keep promises when the news cycle sleeps. That means the drills on slow weeks, the walkthroughs after budgets pass, the porch lights left on for nobody in particular and everybody at once. Tomorrow is the last file. We'll go back to the river not for a sign, but for a blessing we give the city, not the other way around. We'll tally the ledger without poetry, put names to checklists and minutes to myths, and end where we should, with a child asleep in a room where the clock keeps honest as time. If there's a ledger, it isn't kept by saints or statutes. It's kept by minutes. Tonight, we pay hours and leave the porch light on for whoever still needs directions. This is the closing loop. The floor, the console, the courtroom, the river, the neighborhood. No miracles required. Just permission, presence, and a promise we keep when nobody's filming. Promise. By the last line, you'll know why the law had to change, and why it will keep changing as long as we choose to be early instead of almost. Morning starts with a sky the color of copier paper and a coffee that forgives nothing. The pelican on the counter keeps its beak shut for once, which feels like a blessing. On the legal pad, yesterday's list waits like a second chance. Closest by rule, text when voice can't, triggers that outshout politeness. Plain words that travel. Presence at 8:13, if only to remind the city its memory still has witnesses. There's a knock. It's Marisol in her off-shift hoodie and a smile that looks like it double majored in sleep deprivation and stubbornness. Behind her, Henry from Dispatch, crisp even in jeans, and Nora, carrying a box like she's delivering a verdict. "Field trip," she says. "They've conspired without me, which is how good things usually happen. We start at the store because that's where stories try to dress like errands." Marisol's team runs a quiet drill with customers none the wiser. The greeter clocks a trigger. The pen clicks once, twice, 3 times, and employees appear like commas in the right sentence. No hands, no panic. Just gravity applied in the right direction. A mom at the end cap thanks no one in particular for nothing in particular, the way people do when they know something went right and can't put it into nouns. Next, the center. Henry talks to a room full of rookies and civilians, the same way he talks to callers, like he's lending out calm and charging no interest. He plays a clip from the call we rode. The room hears the breathing, then hears it change. He pauses. "That," he says, pointing at the moment where the caller's voice unknots, "is the sound of policy working?" A rookie writes it down like it's a test answer. It isn't. It's a career. Donna joins us at lunch with a folder labeled Bridge, because of course she does. She keeps the folder closed. "You already know what's in here," she says. It's permission, written in a way a jury can carry and a cashier can remember. She asks Marisol what language works on the floor. "Authorized," Marisol says without hesitation. Dana nods and circles the word on a sheet she won't show us. The best laws are written with borrowed pens. Afternoon brings the community classroom, where a deputy explains patrol patterns to a grandmother who wants to know why the cruiser sometimes idles near her block. "Because you're on the way to everywhere," he says, which is both true and good public relations. They talk about side exits at the strip mall and who to call by name, not number. A faith liaison offers a fellowship hall for a drill night. Someone promises donuts without being asked. Civilization defined. We don't plan the river. We just end up there because all circles need a seam. The light puts gold on the water, the way memory puts mercy on what it can't fix. We aren't looking for sounds tonight. We're looking for a place to say thank you without feeling foolish. At 8:13, the wind lifts. It always does. Maybe it's the bridge, the barge batteries, the piling's harmonics. Maybe it's a tension making a dent in the air, deep enough to catch a small laugh and play it back for people who need a reason to keep getting better. We stand quiet, not out of superstition, but out of respect for a city that learned to apologize by changing its behavior. Nora breaks the silence with science, because that's how she prays. "Aim coupling," she says, half smile. "And pressure. Presence," Marisol adds. "Permission," Henry says. "Plain words," Dana finishes. "Porch lights," I say, because someone has to be sentimental, and I have tenure. We don't hear a laugh. Good. The best miracles are the ones that step aside when they're no longer needed. Back at my place, nobody asks to come in, and nobody leaves right away. We eat terrible cookies from a plastic clamshell and tell quick stories we can afford to tell on a weekday. False alarms that ended up being true alarms for something else. A rookie who parked where the cameras could see the questions. A manager who used the code phrase without turning it into theater. The room warms the way rooms do when people who've held the same weight set it down at the same time. Before they go, I hand out small envelopes like a man passing out fortunes at a cheap restaurant. Inside is one sentence, printed on cardstock so it feels like it matters. Don't let kindness buy time. On the back, because I can't help myself, be early. After the door closes, the house exhales. The pelican stops judging. I tidy the legal pad pile into one stack, banded like a choir. On top, one blank page. It doesn't stay blank long. We changed the law. The law changed us. Almost? Almost is the word that keeps me honest. It drags the porch light chain every night and makes sure the bulb still works. It studies the drill schedule and calls the manager when the dates fall apart. It mails the city council a list without adjectives and waits politely at the podium for 3 minutes that matter more than a rant ever will. Almost is humility, weaponized. People ask, sometimes, what to do with the ache that lives under the ribs when you carry a name you didn't get to save. Here's the closest thing to an answer. Give it a job. Let it hold the end of a checklist, or stand by a side exit on a Friday night, or teach a rookie how to talk before he drives, or write words simple enough to fit on a lanyard and stubborn enough to outlast the coffee. Ache with purpose turns into presence. Presence on time turns into policy. Policy kept turns into quiet nights where clocks behave and radios stay boring. Around 8:13, yes. Still I flip the switch on the porch light and watch it throw a square of yellow onto the concrete like a small stage. Somewhere in this city, a kid will walk under a similar square and feel, without language, that somebody planned for their safety. They won't know about the doctrine or the drafts or the bridge folder or the lanyard cards. They'll just know the adults were early. The radio is off. The clock keeps honest time. I go to the door, open it to the warm Florida dark, and leave it open long enough to prove the night isn't hunting me. Then I close it, not against the world, but for the world I can protect from here. If there's a ledger, it counts like this. Seconds, not speeches. Checklists, not myths. Neighbors, not narratives. Porch lights, not prayers. And on the good nights, on the earned nights, the line under the column says paid in full. Tomorrow we start over. Same time, same city. Same light,